Today's microaggressions are tomorrow's improved inclusions. Now let's start with some initial points here. First, acts of harassment and discrimination should never be excused or tolerated. They should be reported, managed, and appropriately enforced. Second, microaggressions and micro-inequities happen. They offend, they polarize work relationships, employee engagement, and organizational culture. Third, the principle of charity is a useful precept and communicative strategy which is often underused in the workplace and our society. To be clear, microaggressions and micro-inequities do happen, largely due to a number of held cognitive biases formed from our environments and our experiences. These biases create filters that affect the already unique lenses of how we see and interact with others. We must not only question personal biases that lead to microaggression, but also question other biases in how to best approach those who commit these slights against others. For instance, should a first-time microaggression result in a receiving party's response of direct anger, blaming, shaming, or shunning given back to the transgressor? Perhaps reporting them to a manager, even HR. Can organizations teach and expect employees to take these slights, these subtle blows, as new opportunities for growth? To strengthen empathy, understanding, and a focus on raising both peer-to-peer and organizational inclusion as a whole? Now this is where the principle of charity comes in. And here's something I'd like you to consider. First, the principle of charity is a precept used within general communication and rhetoric. It's a generosity of spirit where in the face of receiving an initial microaggression, one chooses to interpret other people's statements at their best and their most reasonable form. Now look, in no way am I suggesting that we ignore microaggression or provide a transgressor with the benefit of the doubt. Ignore it and just move on. But I'm not suggesting as well that you simply snub them or you choose to label their character or their intent based solely on one single mistake. Instead, I think it's really important we become empowered to take on a personal investigation by communication. So a tactful and structured engagement whose success largely depends on the way you frame this conversation and how the transgressor chooses to respond. Now, I strongly advise against confronting the transgressor immediately after the microaggression event. Here's the thing. Often, you as the receiver are going to be emotionally charged. You may seek to lash out, to get even. You got to step back from your initial need to fight back, practice more mindfulness and greater emotional intelligence. There's a bigger principle here and a bigger lesson to be learned. Be strategic in presenting your thoughts and feelings at the right time and in the right place. Maybe that's going to be over lunch or later in the day in a conference room. Perhaps the next day over morning coffee. Tell the person that what they said was offensive. Perhaps even more important, seek to frame this as how their actions or words could hurt them in the future. Allow them a chance to explain themselves, to react, and don't interrupt. This is a terrific time to be a good listener. Let them speak, let them share their thoughts and their feelings as it lends to healing and change. And don't worry, you will not only receive an apology, in most cases you're going to receive several of them. Now, I wouldn't recommend an email medium for this exchange unless you absolutely feel as though you can't speak to them face-to-face. An email may even tee up a face-to-face afterwards. But eye-to-eye contact through this interaction, extremely important. Now, obviously, if they react with hostility or they treat you poorly thereafter and the relationship is marred or negatively changed, you need to involve others. Remember, there are good people out there who make mistakes, and sometimes they do insensitive things. They may say the wrong thing, but this is a time to have a generous spirit. There's a bigger principle at play here, and this is where the principle of charity can make its mark. I really challenge employees, managers, chief people officers, diversity and inclusion professionals in business and college, and human resource leaders to fall back on this quote from Jim Rohn: if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. Think of all the many millions of microaggressions and micro-inequities that happen each and every day in the business world, each and every day in society. And now ask yourself, if only 10% of these events became peer-to-peer teaching and learning opportunities, how much more improvement could we have? How much better could employee engagement be? Where people genuinely bond strongly through real inclusion because they understand how to work within differences and diversity. That's my 5 minutes on transforming microaggressions into greater inclusion. Now go take on your day.